You ready?
Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, everyone. Today we are talking to Carl Johnson, Demonologist. He was just recently whisked away by a demon. Oh no, he's back. He's got his.
I won't leave
He's
it.
ready. He's ready to roll. This is the ever elusive Carl Johnson. He joining us today to talk about his work with Panorama Paranormal and Demonology. So strap in while we explore the edges of the unknown. Well, good afternoon, Carl. We really
Good afternoon to
appreciate
you.
you joining us. And the thing that I want to know always starting off is how does one go from perhaps wanting to be a firefighter or a policeman to deciding they're going to study demons, maybe demon iconography, maybe the history of demons, or any number of demon related topics, and then dedicate their life to it?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Dedicate my life. I certainly have done that. Not always intentionally, but it's turned out that way. Well, a head start was being raised in a haunted household. As we were a haunted house. Why that was, we were never sure, except one influence might have been that there were three adolescents in the house. So this is when activity seemed to kick up. And two of them, the brother and sister, played on a Ouija board, a spirit board. Um, but things were happening ever since we were real little kids. We don't know why that is. It's just something about our psyches, I think, keyed into it. But there was enough stuff happening that we knew something was not so normal about the house. I mean, most days were business as usual, but there were some times when the unusual really kicked up. Um, Objects would move around, and we'd see them like furnishings. We'd hear noises downstairs in the basement where my parents kept, chairs and tables stored, and we'd find them moved in the morning. Um, my mother went to take a drink of water from the spigot. This had to be where we were real young because my sister was still in a high chair, and we heard a slurping sound, and my mother's glass was suddenly empty.
No way.
No, no, it was suddenly, yeah, and we remember that solidly. Yes. Um, might wonder why weren't my parents driven out to, oh, we can't stand this anymore, Beverly. We have to. No, it wasn't anything like that. My father never believed in paranormal happenings in the house. The only thing my father would say was like, it's eerie. It's eerie the way things disappear around here because a lot of papers would be gone and his checkbook, things like that. My mother would be very impressed when things happened. But by the next day, it was like, I don't know. I think you put it somewhere. I think you were dreaming. It's like, all right, mom, you're no good eyewitness for this. But it was fun. It was amusing. It didn't get too boring. So we knew there was some kind of spirit influence in that house. I think it actually came from the next door house, which was my grandfather's sizable house, and they had a history going way back, but they never talked about supernatural or paranormal things. But they said haunted sometimes. So that was an early influence. I was always interested in researching the strange, the bizarre, the uncanny. One of my early readings, I read this book when I was 11 years old. It was Psychopathia Sexualis by Kraft Ebing. I had to use a dictionary a lot. And Hill and Williams, The Supernatural. That was when I was 11. I started reading voraciously. When I was 10 years old, I read the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Frankenstein, that was an early reading too. I think I was 9. My brother and I were 9 when we were sharing that, reading that. So it increased our vocabularies, of course. But there's always something more attractive about things that had a mystery to them. Life could seem boring without those mysterious things. So always drawn to it. But then, we had the real stuff happening. This was a haunted house. We knew that. And I was always trying to talk to the spirits. Carl was trying to talk. I was the rabble rouser with my brother and sister. let's get the spirit board out. Let's do a seance, and they go along with me. So that interest was fostered early on. And by the time I was 16 years of age, I was actually a paranormal investigator. I just didn't have anybody with whom to investigate, like I was doing it on my own. Um, but then by the time we were 14 and 15, we were getting, for Christmas, we would get cassette recorders, tape or reel to reel recorders it started with. So we would record our little investigations. And eventually, down the line, we would ask questions of the supposed spirits in the house. And we started to get answers. I had never heard, when I was up until I was perhaps 19 years old, I never heard the term EVP, electronic voice phenomena. Those are instances where supposedly a spirit will speak through an audio, an electromagnetic device like a cassette recorder or later a digital recorder. And then I got an answer, well, not even an answer. I wasn't even asking a question at the time. And I got an extraneous voice on a recording. And I knew I was up into something. I think this is a ghost talking to me. And 2 years later, I saw this nifty show that used to be on in the later 1970s. It was called In Search of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy.
Sure.
What could the strangest occurrence have been? And one episode was about EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recording disembodied voices. That's what happened to me. I got a spirit voice, and that confirms it. I never knew what to make of it, but the first recording I ever got that was like an extraneous, like strange voice, it sounded like it was in slow motion. And I wasn't trying to record anything strange. I was with my friend Mark. We were recording some music in our conversation because, cassette recorders were new to us and they were fun. So we just, kept it on. And we replayed our conversation afterwards. This was in the basement of my parents' house. I remember the date. It was August 23rd, 1973. I'm very mature. I'm one of your more mature guests here. So I've been around. And so we played back the recording, not trying to get anything strange. And then I heard this. We looked at each other. What the heck was that? It sounded like a voice in slow motion. I played it again. I said, that's saying someone help me. So my friend's recorder, he could turn a dial and accelerate it. You could speed up the sound. And he sped it up. And then it kind of sounds, when it's going faster, it sounds like a woman's voice. You hear tapping as if tapping on the microphone, the external mic. And then a voice says, Carl, help me. Help.
Really?
Later on, it would make me think of you. Help me, help me, Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. It was kind of like that, but Carl, help me, help. I said, how do I help you? What do? I don't know what to do, but it's nifty that I got this voice. Afterwards, analyzing it, I've wondered, was that a voice from my future? Was it me? Was it a spirit that we'd somehow pulled out from the spirit board? Or pulled into the house. I've never known what to make of it, if it was from the past, the present, or the future, however they can blur in the spirit realm. And so I was more hooked on spirit investigating after that. I didn't expect to become what's called a demonologist, somebody who specializes in that, the more malevolent seeming entities. But that began with my association with Ed and Lorraine Warren. I met them at Rhode Island College in April 16th, 1972. And I remember going to the first time I ever heard them speak, noted Ed and Lorraine Warren. I said, that's who I want to be when I grow up. I want to be like these guys. Now, Ed came to bill himself, Ed Warren, as a demonologist. And Lorraine Warren was the clairvoyant. Later, she became a demonologist. I define demonology as the systematized study of the lore and cultural traditions of wicked spirits. As simple as that. Now there's scholastic or academic demonology and applied demonology. Applied demonology would be when someone actually addresses cases and receives messages to and tries to help people with their problems and may even go out on cases. So I try to incorporate both. So I went on a couple of cases with Ed and Lorraine Warren. I lectured with them. I got to know them. And as a group at Rhode Island College, see, after I spoke on stage actually with the Warrens, Ed Warren called me up and we had some audience participation. I was invited to join a group, an investigating team based at Rhode Island College in Providence. Oh, this is what I've been looking for. So I came to their meeting and I became a member of their team, as did my twin brother, Keith Johnson. We were addressing exterior cases, going to outdoor settings with some fascinating results at times. But we wanted to start addressing residential situations, like go to people's homes, help them evaluate what they felt was their haunting, see if we could probe and find anything to it. To that effect, my brother, while we were members of this team at Rhode Island College, my brother placed an ad in a local paper, local periodical, and that ad advertised our team, the existence of our team at Rhode Island College. We were PIRO, Parapsychological Investigatory and Research Organization. Sounded cool. 3 weeks to the day after my brother published that ad, we were contacted by a Mrs. Carolyn Perrin, and she wanted us to come to their farm. Her and her husband, Roger, had a year before purchased a farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. They wanted us to come explore it. They had strange things happening there. They wanted to get to the bottom of it, see what we thought. So Mrs. Perrin came to Rhode Island College. We interviewed her and agreed to come to her house. Their house was way out there in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Of course, now it doesn't seem so remote, but back then, Harrisville, I've heard of it. It's out there, Burrillville. And we went to the parents' house and conducted our first, as a team, first interior paranormal investigation. Now, we were at this for a couple of months. This was actually August through September 1973. One of us in the team decided it might be a good idea to contact Ed and Lorraine Warren, of The Conjuring fame. Of course, this was 40 years before The Conjuring movie. And it's not that we felt we were in over our heads. We just thought it would be a nice touch to maybe consult Ed and Lorraine Warren, because I knew them personally at that point. They had dinner at my parents' house. We all went out to dinner too. And let me contact Ed and Lorraine, just get some advice from them, or at least get their take on it. But we weren't calling for help. We just wanted to be advised by the Warrens, perhaps. Well, Mr. Warren invited himself over. I think he felt that if Carl had a case, it was probably something to it. So he invited himself and his wife Lorraine over to that house. And I thought, well, why not? This will be prestigious. We'll be working with the Warrens. Have them come over and check it out. Well, I didn't know that Ed and Lorraine were going to totally take over the case. And they did, because we had things happening. It was legitimate bangings on the wall. The family was being disturbed. And so, have Ed and Lorraine, come over. I explained who Ed and Lorraine were to Carolyn and Roger Perrin. And it was a nice first interview with the Warrens there. I remember Ed and Lorraine pulling up in the gravel driveway. I greeted them and introduced them to Roger and Carolyn Perrin, who owned that house in Harrisville that would become the Conjuring house. Okay, and it was all very congenial. And the Warrens and our team investigated together. We couldn't have known that would be the last time we'd see the Perrins for a lot of years. I didn't see the Perrins family until 40 years later. And I didn't know that was going to happen. I was in daily touch with Mrs. Carolyn Perrin. She was calling me every day for a couple of weeks, giving me updates about what was happening in their home. And eventually we'd have conversation where we weren't even talking about the house. We just became friendly. So, but we did go over after a couple of weeks of our first time at the Perrins' house, Round Top Farm in Harrisville. And boy, what a difference in Mrs. Perrin. She was already a slender woman, very attractive, slender lady. She had lost a dramatic amount of weight. She looked as though she had not eaten or had anything to drink for those 2 weeks. It's like, what the heck is the house devouring these people? Roger Perrin had scratches on his arm that he said he couldn't explain. But again, we were handling this as a scientific investigation to the best of our limited abilities at the time. We had some equipment. We had a cassette recorder. We had a Polaroid camera. We had a notepad, but not much more than that. And our team members, there were like 5 of us investigating this house. But we were taking notes. We were recording. We were documenting. Once Ed and Lorraine became involved in this case, it ceased being an investigation and became an intercession, if you know what I mean. It went from being objective to subjective, because as soon as they came there, the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren diagnosed that house with the haunting as a demonic haunt. Therefore, they had jurisdiction. They took over. I thought it could have been handled differently. I thought we should have kept documenting, not just assume that there's some evil entity in the house. I never did think there was an evil presence in that house, and I don't think there's an evil presence now. I don't think there ever was.
So what made them decide that it was demonic exactly?
Basically because Ed Warren was a demonologist and he had to find the demon. Because it's makes for more of an interesting case to lecture about if it's demonic. And I'm sure they believed it was. Because Carolyn Perrin was being woken up at night, having hallucinations and visions, hypnagogic hallucinations, like on that threshold of waking. She would see things in her bedroom. Now, Mrs. Perrin was a very impressionable woman, sensitive, intuitive, highly perceptive, but she did see things in the night. And she had 5 adolescent daughters of various ages. And they became very psychic too. If mom was seeing these things, they saw them. So it was a hotbed for like something happening. And I'm not saying they didn't have stuff, because the first time we were there, we heard knockings, bangings. I asked Mrs. Perrin and the girls, I said, "Excuse me, do you have company upstairs? Because I'm hearing people moving around." Said, "No, we hear that almost every day." So the interview at the house resumed, and I kind of backed away and went up the stairs and didn't tell anybody I was going up there. But I went up there to probe, and there were the girls' bedrooms upstairs. We were all downstairs. And when I got to the top of the stairs, to the second floor, the noises ceased. I went in, looked around, and within less than a minute, something came in. I saw out of my right peripheral vision, I saw something dark. I don't know what to call it. It was a darkness. I call it the darkening now, actually. And this dark thing was coming towards me. It wasn't a shadow person because it was amorphous. It wasn't formed like a person. I thought it was smoke. I thought, geez, that the house is on fire. There's a backdraft. I'm going to smell smoke. This black thing came towards me and enveloped me, but I didn't feel any change in my mood except being startled. I didn't smell any smoke. It just came at me and then it went. So that was interesting. So I went downstairs, and where my brother and Donna, our case manager, were still interviewing Carolyn and the girls. So I gave my brother kind of a look. There's something up there. And went down to the basement. I was the only one who dared to go down to the basement. Well, my brother did after me, but I was the first one down to the basement. I got to be creepy. They say things happen down there. And it was just an interesting investigation. And we said we'd be back, and we were. Next, when we came back, that's when Carolyn looked like something was eating at her. Something was distressing her. But again, they had moved into an 18th century farmhouse. Carolyn was very much into reading horror stories. I think it was only natural that for her, not supernatural, maybe not preternatural, but natural for Carolyn Perrin that she would see things in that house and that she would be receptive to them. I can't say she didn't. I just never thought it was anything evil. Then enter the Warrens, and suddenly it was a demonic. We'd never said demonic before that. That was not a term we used much back then. Actually, that term demon, it's always been around, but that was incorporated into English parlance with the advent of the novel and then the movie The Exorcist. Suddenly everybody knew what a demon was. They possessed people. They possessed little girls. That's what demons do. Right. Turn them into grotesqueries. So then, and this is 1973, the end of that year, the movie came out, The Exorcist. It was released actually in December to some theaters and went to general theaters in January 1974. So suddenly the populace knows what a demon is. Don't play with the Ouija board, you get possessed. And but they turned it into a demonic case because that's what Ed and Lorraine believed. And I was with Lorraine when she had her vision in that house of something demonic. So, not to spend the whole time talking about that house in Harrisville, but that's how I got to know Ed and Lorraine Warren, and that's how I became a demonologist. I did go in a couple of cases with Ed and Lorraine. I lectured with them, and it seemed every time I was called in to help with some paranormal case, they wanted me, not our team at Rhode Island College. And I would hear, Carl, we think we're over our heads. We need you to help us out with this. And I said, well, thank you for your confidence. I don't know what they expect from me. They said, well, we know you won't run out if anything happens. Rarely did something happen that would make you want to run out. Not never, but rarely. And then someone brought to my attention, I don't remember what magazine it was in. Somebody showed me a magazine there was an article about the Warrens. And one line said, Carl Johnson, the demonologist from Rhode Island, was assisting. Somebody said, look, Carl, you're mentioned. I said, oh, demonologist, huh? That's what I am. Okay. I kind of like it. Has a ring to it. I'm a demonologist then. And I'll be a demonologist until somebody points out to me that I'm not. But that's when I started learning and studying very intensely demonology, the darker type, the more menacing types of spirits, allegedly. And of course, it's all based in psychology and abnormal psychology. And things do happen. Things do go bump in the night. Now, I was also spoken about. There used to be the David Susskind show. He's long since passed away. Before Phil Donahue, there was, if you can even remember Phil Donahue, before Phil Donahue, there was David Susskind. He was a journalist and had a television show. And one episode, David Susskind was interviewing Ed and Lorraine Warren. I got a call from friends of mine in Foster, Rhode Island, Ed and Pat Morgan. They said, Carl, you better turn on the television. They're talking about you. Moi? They're talking about me on television? Ooh, how nice. He said, no, it's not nice, Carl. You should hear what they're saying. So I caught the tail end of it. And what the interview was, with Ed and Lorraine, they spent a great deal of time warning the viewers about Carl in Rhode Island. It's like, what? What did I do? Am I like competition? I mean, I'm not that well known. I'm not well known, But that's how I started with demonology. Now, my first demonic case, because I never considered that situation in Harrisville to be menacing or demonic. It was inconvenient for them because it was scaring them. To us, it was like, oh, great, we're actually beginning to document phenomena. When you're living with it, it's different, though. To them, it was evil, menacing, because shadowy figures moving through a house, that does seem evil if you're living there and it's waking you up at night.
Did you ever find out why they were doing that? Why they were down talking to you?
Only on a I did actually. I was going to say on a personal note, but I have heard from other people why that was happening. Basically, to be frank, it was good for business. They had somebody to hold up there and say, "Look at this. This is someone you should avoid. He's devilish. I think it was because I was starting to become known as a paranormal investigator. I mean, they were doing lectures all the time. I shouldn't have been any problem for them. But I was into ritual magic at the time, and once they found that out, then I was the bad guy.
So for our viewers and our listeners, what is ritual magic?
Ritual magic is when somebody has a system of it's a cult, basically, to use a very basic and general term. Ritual magic is when somebody actually performs magic rites or spells or magic actions trying to affect a change in their environment. That's really the definition of magic. Not stage magic, not applied magic, but actual, like using psychic power to try and change your environment, to try and make things happen. I was just experimenting with it. I wasn't trying to get things from magic except to have, like learn. See if will a ghost appear if I speak to it. Will something happen if I cast a spell? I was reading up on it. So for
what
me,
kind of spells would you cast?
oh
Like,
well,
where did you find these spells? Where?
well, there was my literature on the paranormal. This is before we called it the paranormal. Back in the 1960s and early 1970s, this wasn't called. Oh, hello. It wasn't called the paranormal. It was supernatural and occult. Those were and then we started to say parapsychology. So I was just trying to make objects move with my mind. I must say I actually got to be able to do that. If there is a spirit, make it appear. Yeah, sometimes I could didn't really look like a person, but it would look like a human shape. I was able to do things like, not consistently, but I was just fascinated with anything odd like that I could document, that I could repeat and experiment, have it happen again. So suddenly I was the devil worshiper. You know. So, but I was living in Rhode Island. The Warrens were from Connecticut. This was southern New England. So let's see. Oh, what's that? Oh, Carl, sounds more rational. The Warrens into histrionics. I do concur with that. The Warrens were very definitely, they were not intellectuals, let's say that. They were not rationalists. They were not documenting. They had a business going. And this isn't bash the Warrens and say they did everything wrong. No, I enjoy it.
But it isn't not that.
It's not that. No, it's on the threshold, you might say, to call
Yeah, you might say that.
It's kind of leaning towards that, I will say.
You're just talking about your experience with
we're open to.
I say this. Yeah, I'm not saying bad Warrens. I'm just saying I'm talking about this as if it was an accident report, which it seemed like sometimes, like a police report. Just saying what happened. I never agreed with the Warrens' methodologies. It was go in. Lorraine intuits the evil presence. There's a demon in the house, so brandish the crosses and cast it out. Perform an exorcism on the house. And this all flared up when The Exorcist was released. It changed their business. Ed was not calling or being referred to as a demonologist prior to that movie. And, there's a call for that kind of approach. It just wasn't mine. So I think I presented some kind of, I won't say threat, but I'll say some differing of opinion. What I was
market
doing.
Competition, perhaps.
Yeah, it was unnecessary that they actually go as far as to warn people about Carl.
Yeah, watch out for Carl.
I thought that was rather silly, puerile. I mean, I was 18 years of age, 17, 18, 19 years of age, and they're coming out in magazine articles warning about me. I don't think
intimidated by your raw animal and magnetism.
Well, thank you. I will say I had a certain charisma about me. Maybe that was part of it.
It shows through to this day.
Oh, thank you very much. But you have to picture an 18-year-old Carl with shoulder length, wavy, strawberry blonde hair, and the deep voice, and angled sideburns, and talking about ritual magic and about demons. And yeah, I could see why it was catching on, but I was exploited at first willingly. I said, okay, exploit me, make me famous. I want to do what you're doing. I want a living at it. Then it got nasty after a time. I had people mailing me Bibles, but I received a lot of fan mail too. This is when you actually used to write letters and put stamps on them. And I received a lot of fan mail.
It's ironic that you don't think the Bibles were fan mail.
No, they were like, we want to save you. But I was very touched by that, very appreciative of that. So that's how I became established as this paranormal researcher. But it jumped into a whole new level when I became involved in a situation in Providence, Rhode Island, the Armory District of Providence, the West End. I was acquainted with a family there. They were of Hispanic origin. In fact, I had gone down to Puerto Rico. I lived in Puerto Rico for 4 months researching Santeria. I was all of 21 years old at this time. And but I saw some pretty remarkable things down there. I also, it was not easy living basically on my own in Puerto Rico. especially when I didn't speak any Spanish. But I knew a family down there, and I was able to go down there. It turns out I was pretty much on my own once I got down to Puerto Rico. I lived in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, and I had to learn Spanish fast just to get along. I always thought everybody speaks English and they're going to interpret anyway, but no. And I had to learn the language. And I saw remarkable things studying Santeria down there. And when I returned, I was friendly with the families. I was staying with their cousins in Puerto Rico. They lived in Providence. Then they developed a problem. The son, the oldest, there was the son, brother and sister. And let's see, what should we call him? Let's see. The son's name, Lucas. Let's call him Lucas. Why not? That was his name. Okay. Lucas, I don't think he'd mind now. I don't know if he'd be aware, but they had a son who was 14 years old, this family. Now, he was born in New York City, but his family was from Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And he developed a problem, Lucas. He'd seemed pretty normal. I'd met him a few times. But then I heard something was going wrong. Lucas was going under these fits, kind of like seizures. But when these seizures came on him, he would be overtaken by another personality, something else, someone within him would emerge, and he'd be speaking differently. Like I said, he had two distinct personalities. Oh, even though I was like very young, I thought, this is probably this is before we had bipolar and dissociative personality disorder. I thought he's got split personality, some manifestation of that. He's an adolescent. His identity is forming, and this is probably combined with some type of epilepsy. So it's all medical. It's induced psychologically. So I was invited to stay overnight and watch this boy because he was going under these spells where some other personality would take over him. I said, well, it's interesting. Feel kind of eerie about it, a little apprehensive, but yeah, I'll do that. Because even then I had a reputation of somebody who wouldn't run out of a haunted house. So one night, and I think it was 1980 at this time, I stayed overnight in their residence in Providence. I was on the third floor, and Lucas's bedroom was on the third floor of the house they owned. I thought maybe he'll have a nightmare, maybe it'll get interesting. So it was around 1 a.m. and I was dozing on a sofa outside of the boy's room. Okay, right around 1 o'clock, I was startled awake by an ear-splitting scream. The kind you don't go back to sleep when you hear this. It was Lucas. He's screaming. Ear-splitting scream. I jumped off the couch and I fumbled for the wall switch for the overhead light, flicked on the light, and as I turned on the overhead light in this room, Lucas's bedroom door came open on its own. Boom. And out was cast Lucas. Lucas's body flew out of that room and was spinning around the floor and careening into the walls. It was like a powerful man was throwing his body around.
Eesh.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you do? I'd never seen anything like that. I was into researching the paranormal, but something like that. I watched his body spinning and actually hovering off the floor and spinning. So he wasn't breakdancing. He was just being thrown around. And he did what we call the spider crawl, went up the wall like that. I just stood transfixed. I mean, there's nothing I could do. I was looking. And because of his screams, his family came upstairs. They were down on the second floor. They came upstairs and came into this like hallway room or ante room. And when they came in the room, Lucas did a backward flip and landed on the sofa where I had been reclining. And he jumped up and down, flapping his hands, and he's jumping as if he was on a trampoline. And this awful voice came out of his throat, like this loud laughter. Then he looked at me with this wild look, and he flew at me. I said, "Why me?" So as he jumped at me, the slender boy, I caught him by his forearms, and I tried to restrain him without injuring him, but I didn't have to worry about him. He threw me off. And it was a unnatural strength he had. And the room, by the way, became icy cold. Why that was, I don't know. And well, then he came to himself. But if I needed any more convincing that this was genuine, he was panicked. He was shivering and crying and calling for his uncle. So his uncle came in. He was close to his uncle, brought him downstairs. So what are we going to do about that situation? It was decided we would arrange for an expulsion. An expulsion is a form of minor exorcism, but not the Ritualis Romano. It's not the Latin verse. We were going to do an expulsion, expel this invading spirit, as it was assumed to be. Now, they were personifying what was happening with this boy. So, okay, if that's going to work, fine. His godmother, Lucas's godmother, was Santorian. So I was going to not so much officiate, but participate in the exorcism, the expulsion. It was set up. They set up an altar down on the first floor of the house. Lucas was sitting kind of apprehensively looking around and smiling, not knowing what to expect. And they started to chant in Latin. The few people gathered there under this Mercedes, his godmother. And I thought, they're actually doing a Santorian ritual. This is Santorian. I recognize it. But if it works, okay. Our chairs were arranged, the people attending, participating, they were arranged around that makeshift altar in a semicircle. I was in the center. Okay, when we started this procedure, something changed in that house. The floor shook, the house groaned. It's kind of the effect of if a truck was going by or an earth tremor, but it wasn't either of those. The house just shook. Then it became eerily quiet again. And my chair with me in it, I had been like the center of the half circle. My chair with me in it slid back across the floor. I hardly had a chance to be startled. It went back across the floor to the wall with me in it. Again, why me? And then Lucas fell to the floor, and that other personality took over him. He became hostile and assaultive. And then next hour, the strangest darn things happened. Now, there was religious iconography around the house because they were Roman Catholic. That shows you something. Demon possession, Roman Catholic influence, upbringing. They knew what a demon does, or supposedly does. Now, during this expulsion rite or ceremony, whatever it was, there was a picture of Jesus on a table. Picture of Jesus. I was hoping that Lucas, the boy, would look over at that picture and kind of be distracted from how he was. About a half a minute later, I looked at the picture again. That picture of Jesus had turned itself upside down. It was inverted. I didn't hear that happen. But if there was a surveillance camera in there, it would have shown that picture turning, flipping around. And at one time during this procedure, I felt like I was being taken over by something. Despite the fact that it was very unusual, I was pretty detached. I was staying focused. Then this change in my mood came on me. Very suddenly, I felt distracted. I felt kind of ill, and I felt an onrush of anger mixed with panic. Some impulse was telling me to jump out the window. I mean, we were on the first floor, big deal, but something was telling me, jump out that window, jump out that window. And I wasn't going to listen to that. What I did was I just concentrated on my own self, my own sense of self, my own presence. And I guess I was too strong for whatever was trying to invade me, but it pulled out. I could feel like fingers in the back of my head. And it seemed to go into, there was a young lady in the room. It seemed to go to her, whatever this invasive thing was. And she immediately, as soon as it left me, she fell to the floor and started pulling out her hair. So something was real there. I have ideas about what made that happen. I don't think it was supernatural in a real sense. But this came to a climax when Lucas started to advance towards me. Now, at this point, I just wanted to go back to my parents' house. I knew there was food in the refrigerator. They were a 20-minute drive away. I just wanted out of there. But I knew if I left, that wouldn't help build confidence in the people I was trying to help. They say, if he ran out, what can we do? And I might not be able to go into a situation like that again. If I fled the scene once, I probably would again. So I stood my ground. Lucas started to advance towards me. He was my height, but slender, and he's got his hand outreached. What he intended, I don't know, but he had that wild look in his gaze. So all I could think of was doing was, I stood there and I held up my hand. And I said, stop. And he did. He stopped. And I went up to this boy and I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, you're going to be all right. And he was. I'm not saying I did it all myself, but that was a pivotal moment. That seemed to break the spell because I said, stop. Something told me to say it. Maybe it was my demonologist sense budding. Generally, when there's a situation such as this, it keeps coming back and back. You don't make much progress with it. But this was a success story. He was better after that. He had one more instance where he was riding in the backseat with his parents a few weeks later, and they went by a cathedral church, and he started to scream. But that was just one little flashback, and he didn't have anything happen to him after that. Now, I knew the family, and years later, let me see, it was about 2 years later, not quite 2 years later, I asked Lucas, I said, hey, do you remember? Oh, no, it was 3 years later. Sorry. I asked Lucas, I said, do you know what was happening to you? Do you remember that? He said, well, what? I said, no, when you were being taken over by something, and we did a procedure to try and cure you, and all kinds of heck was breaking loose. It started when he had picked up a glove in a cemetery and brought it home. And his godmother told him, no, you must bring that back. You'll anger the spirits. He went to get the glove. The glove had disappeared. So that's how it seemed to start when this personality was taken over. And Lucas didn't remember it. He said, I remember a little bit about it. Doesn't bother me. Now, it's not that he blocked it all out of his head, but he didn't care about it anymore. He'd gotten over that. That was interesting.
Was that the craziest experience that you've had with all these years of investigating?
Well, it certainly seemed crazy at the time. Not quite the craziest, no. Probably the most evocative emotionally because of the things that were happening. But we remember they had a lot of religious pictures and statuary in their house. They believed in spirits coming upon people and intervening and, messing with people. That was the Santerian influence. They weren't Santerian, this family, but the godmother was. So I see that he was going through an identity crisis kind of time, and by personifying it, by looking upon it as an evil spirit, which his family believed, that made it less formidable. They could detach themselves from it, and eventually it went away. The scariest, well, I think the most intriguing one I saw, and I've been through a few of those so-called demonic cases where someone was taken over. Probably the most fascinating, and I'd say at times the most disturbing. I don't really get scared, but it was startling again. There was a house the house is still there, the people aren't, in Coventry, Rhode Island, Hill Street in Coventry, Rhode Island. In fact, I wrote a report on this. I call it The Haunted House on Hill Street. That was a poltergeist. Guys, if you ever have a chance to witness a poltergeist, if somebody says, we got a poltergeist in the house, you want to come see it, want to see what's happening, I highly recommend it because it is one of the most fascinating experiences someone can have, to actually witness a poltergeist in action. Poltergeist is a German contractive word, means noisy ghost. And usually when we think poltergeist, we'll think of dishes flying around the room. Poltergeist can be subtle. There were objects flying around this room. It was one of those very rare instances where things were flying around the room while our investigative team was there. Often we'll hear, before you came, we heard rappings and bangings on the wall, and then it stopped when you guys got here. Or after you left, my crucifix was pulled off, and all hell broke loose. No, this was happening while our team was there. And we were watching sugar bowls propelled like at about 20 miles an hour. So in the house, they would shatter against the post. picture didn't just come off the wall, it spun. This was genuine. And that was the second time I was sitting in a chair, and my chair went back across the room with me in it. It was remarkable. This is the Marin's case, and it's been so many years, it doesn't matter. This was way after that incident in Providence. This was 2007 into 2008. We were dealing with the Marin's case, and it was hairy. Again, there were psychological influences. That's why it was happening. Any demonic case I've ever addressed, invariably there is an element of suppressed trauma, unresolved conflict. Something went wrong, and it's suppressed. This is how it comes out. Sigmund Freud said, suppressed emotions don't die. They become buried alive, and they surface later in more destructive ways. And that's what was happening in the Marin's house. But they genuinely had a poltergeist. Most researchers feel that a poltergeist has some connection to an adolescent or a young person in the house. Well, they had 7 children, all different ages. Eventually, they had 8 children, this couple. So there's a hotbed for things happening. And the lady of the house, Tina, she was born on an island in the Azores. Again, believed in spirits manifesting in one's lives. And her husband, Tony, he was from, Guatemala? Again, spiritual people. And Tina and her sister, the lady of the house and her sister, when they were growing up, they had 10 Ouija boards or spirit boards. 3 of them they burned. 7 of them were lost. So it's like, wow, you wonder why things are happening here. To me, it wasn't a surprise what was happening. It was the way it was. But I was called in my capacity as a demonologist, trying to make sense of this. And I had been on Ghost Hunters, the show, the series Ghost Hunters, for the first 2 seasons. Then I left of my own accord. I've done enough of that. I've been on some television since then. But addressing the Marin's case, Tina was going through an awful time with what was happening to her. I'd get calls from her husband. Man, you got to come over. She's in a bad way. Well, I can kind of understand that because I'd be on the phone with these people. I had crashing in the background. Objects moved around, smashed against walls, appeared and broke. I was in the bedroom once with the team, our investigating team, and suddenly, I think it was a sugar bowl. They said a sugar bowl appeared over my head. I didn't see it appear, but I saw it crash in front of me because they screamed and said, "It was right above your head." I always stay calm when these things happen. I said, can somebody get me a plastic bag? I want to save these shards. And I picked up one of the shards of crockery that had smashed. And I said, Tina, this is kind of warm and damp. I didn't know why. I said, what does this mean to you? It's warm. She said, oh my God, that came from my dishwasher 2 rooms away. Also, when I was in that room, that seemed to be a focus of activity there. I happened to look in the hallway, and just as I did, a kitchen knife was coming down through the hallway, not spinning, just coming down through the air in a straight trajectory. I was holding a remote thermograph temperature reader. The knife came and struck the instrument I was holding, but didn't hit my hand and clattered to the floor. I could only feel flattered. It's singling me out, doesn't want me here or wants my attention. We were never able to solve that case because there was too much chaos going on, but it was fascinating. We did an overnight, our team, it was 4 Seasons Paranormal, and they had called me in as the demonologist. So we stayed an overnight at the Maris house. They went out and farmed the children over to the sister's house, and they were going till like 3:30 in the morning. So we had plenty of time to investigate, and we were recording everything that was happening. Dawn, who was leading the investigation, she said, I'm not sure what to say to it, to the spirit, whatever. I don't know what to say. I said, ask the spirit if it misses Tina. And so Dawn said, "Do you like Tina? Do you want Tina home?" Okay, when I got back into the wee hours of the morning, I decided, well, before I get to sleep, I'm going to play this recording. So I got 90 minutes of audio tape to listen to. I'm not hearing anything remarkable. Then after I guess it was over an hour of listening to this tape, this recording, I hear Dawn say, "Oh, listen to this." Dawn, we're at the dining room table, and Dawn says, "Do you like Tina? Do you want Tina home?" Then we hear the I hear the voice. Oh, do you want Tina home? The strange sibilant male voice intones, "Oh yeah, I'd like to boil Tina."
Damn.
I'm like, who says that? Who said it? So can you imagine? We were excited about this. I mean, self-contained, but I mean, I almost couldn't wait to play this for Tina. We uploaded it onto her laptop computer, and I said, "Tina, now you wanted to know about results. We have results, but I want you to brace yourself because there is something, and you should hear it if you're ready." So we played it, and she hears, "Oh yeah, I'd like to boil Tina," and she's like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God!" But we're thrilled to pieces. We got evidence. It seemed to be a male and a female spirit in that house. Now, poltergeist, yeah, but poltergeists can be subtle. They have voices sometimes. Um, One of our members of this team was Laura Casey, and she used to keep exotic birds herself. She had a parrot and had lovebirds. Well, birds like that, so she was familiar with them. Goldfinches. Well, Tina had two lovebirds. The homeowner, the lady of the house, she had two lovebirds in a cage. So Laura felt the cage was pretty dirty. So Laura was cleaning it for them using her thumbnail and cleaning it in a little brush. And she's talking to the two lovebirds that weren't well kept. And she says, "How you doing, babies?" Of course, I'm recording things that are going on. I play back the tape later. This is a different night, but we're in their house, the Marin's house. And hear Laura say, "How you doing, babies?" Then it's a woman's voice that answers, "Dying." Didn't see anybody at the time. The woman's voice is dying. In less than 2 weeks, both of those birds were dead.
Oh no!
Both died of some avian disease, and so this was genuine. This was the real deal. The only thing is, it was hard to make a cogent report of it because when people found out I was investigating this house, there a lot of paranormal researchers were looking for the next Amityville horror. So they find out about this, and people started coming over to their house in Coventry, and they said, "Well, we can help you with your situation." But everybody wanted to gawk at it and see what was happening there. Something like the Conjuring House in Harrisville, Rhode Island is now. So we stayed with it for some months and became friendly with. They've long since moved out. Actually, the activity didn't die down, and they moved out of the house. Also, they were getting a lot of hostility from the neighbors because they were, Latin origins, and they kept a rooster and chickens. And then this rooster was crowing at dawn and bothering people. So they started to get notes in their mailbox saying, "I'd like to have your rooster for dinner. I'll give you a fair price." And so eventually the harassment and the fact that they still had things moving around in their house, they moved out. Oh, what do you got? Panoramic Paranormal. That looks like us. Let me see if that's me. Us. Is it Elise and Carl? No, that's
I think it's the other way around.
Yeah, that's Paranormal Panorama. They're a different team. Oh yeah, it's close. I mean, it's close. It's this nice.
We'll try again.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you can have me back on, and I'll make sure everything's secure and got over to you.
Yeah.
I'll always have something to talk about. I know I'm dominating this.
No, it's fascinating.
These are cases where I can't really convey the impact of what was happening without. Oh, look at him! I can't really convey it without. This looks like my stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is right.
Yep. Panoramic Perspectives. That's a show we do. and Elise and I do. I'll have her tonight. Yeah, yeah. You got the. Oh, that's a book that Elise has read for her school assignment, and she found that fascinating. Harry Houdini, is a famous debunker. My friend Brian J. Cano. Brian came to Rhode Island to participate in a werewolf case I had.
A
True.
werewolf case?
Yeah, Rhode Island. Strange things happen. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. What's up with Rhode
Oh,
Island?
by the way, yeah, that's a it's our Facebook page here, not our website. But you see, there's our picture, our team picture.
I couldn't
Click on
find your
click on their
website.
photo. Click on their photo there.
Yeah, you might find more there. You probably just get the Facebook page. That's us. Yep. That's Carl, the demonologist, and Elise, the historian and pragmatist. She's a pragmatist. They call her the party pooper too. But I love her approach. She and I are so much on the same page, which is why we're partners. Elise and I, Panorama Paranormal, we are a team of two. We consult other people. We work with other teams and other individuals, but it's our own thing.
You guys' Instagram.
Yeah,
I couldn't find the website.
Well, it's
Really
it
good
takes
on
some
the
tooling
Facebook.
around. It's an HTTP and Panorama Paranormal, and the trouble is with the keywords like paranormal, it jumps into a lot of other sites. Well, it's Panorama Paranormal. That looks familiar too. Yeah, that's our pictures. Oh yeah, I can show you some of those. That's Edgar Allan Poe. I didn't know him personally. Oh yeah, click on this one, please. If you could. There's one down there. If you can grab up a little, that one, yeah, where we're like the summary picture. That is Elise and Carl at Ocean State Paracon. This was 2019. So you can get a look at Elise and me. Yes. I think I weigh about twice what she weighs. She's very much a health fitness buff. She's she's a double black belt in karate, and she's always been into physical fitness, and she's very grounded, very down to earth about her approach to the paranormal. But she has fun with it. Yeah, those are some of our pictures from our website.
Let's see if I can find the website.
Well, I don't. If you could ever find the pictures that I sent over, it has some neat stuff in it. You may not be able to this time. For instance, you probably know it's pretty rare to capture a ghost photograph, picture of a ghost, and know it's legitimate. You kind of have to know who took it to know it's legitimate, because it's so easy to doctor these days. Well, I have the exception. I have two photographs of demons, and they're not like, and they're not like flashes of light where, oh, you can see there's a dragon there, you can see its horns. No, it's nothing like that. It's demonic visages. To the best of my knowledge, I know they came out in the photographs. I was there when the photographs were taken, one of them, the other one, I know the person. One of them, that poltergeist case I was talking about in Coventry, Rhode Island, the picture was taken in their house. So again, I'll eventually be able, maybe I don't know if I could send it over to you from my phone as we're talking. But I have two pictures of demon faces.
Wow.
Now, I'm a little different as a demonologist. I'm not saying, so folks, these things are real. Stay away from these Ouija boards. These spirits are very deceptive. No, I'm saying I don't know what they are. I don't know what these demons are. We think they are beings that are fallen angels. I don't think that. I have my own ideas. I think demons come from the human mind, and they become real. They're not imagined. They become real. They take on a life of their own, so to speak. And that seems to be consistent. Oh, are we almost out of time?
Yeah, we're just about there.
Oh, I'm not nearly done. I'm enjoying this interview. Well, you are allowing me to talk a lot.
Well, we love
appreciate
stories.
that.
We love stories,
Yeah.
and you've
Well,
got some great stories. So
I think that's the best way to get to know what I do is, case after case situation and how I've addressed them. I've given a couple. My book, I have it on the slides I sent over to you, but we'll look at that again sometime. My book is Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook. So, Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook. And that's just what it is. It's a compilation of case histories, some theory, some advice, or what worked for me, what didn't work so well for me. I wrote that with my co-author, Lana Jan Brock. She's an accredited theologian. And we had fun writing that book. I mean, we take like 3 months off and, we got to start writing this again, But it's Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook is precisely 300 pages in length. It's 300 pages long. It has a glossary and an index. A lot of these self-authored books do not have that. But it's not the definitive work on demonology, but it gives my perspective, some things that I encountered in my becoming a demonologist and what I think could be done, should be done, and maybe what wouldn't work so well. But I designed that so that if somebody's on a case and it's getting kind of tricky, they feel that the family says they're really being bothered by this entity, they could pull that book out and say, hey, let's see what this guy Carl did, how he addressed it. And there we go. There's a picture of, Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook.
You can click on the cover and zoom in.
Yeah, that should enlarge it there. There's some of our books, yeah. Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook. See, I always remember the title, Carl L. Johnson and Lana J. Brock. And Lana was fun to write that with. It was. In fact, one chapter is Beware Those Dolls. Dolls can be creepy. That seems to be in vogue, haunted dolls. My doll moved. The eyes moved. In fact, when we go to antique stores, Elise has a position in an antique store, vintage shop. And when Elise sees old dolls, when customers bring in old dolls to sell, she says, if you look at me, if you blink, I'll take you home with me. Yeah. They haven't blinked yet. But yeah, it's about people's phobias with dolls and how dolls can seem to be haunted and sometimes are haunted. So it's called Beware Those Dolls. And Lana contributed part Beware Those Dolls Part 2. I think it's an entertaining read. But
Carl, thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had more time in the program. Unfortunately,
Yes, I know you're limited to the hour. I really look forward to. I thank you for your hospitality, your interest, and I look forward to returning as your guest. Hopefully,
we will have to have you come back to finish telling the stories because we only got 3 stories, and I feel like there's probably 100 more.
Well, the good thing about them is they're all true. The drawback is I can't just tell it in 3 minutes. I have to set up the people. I have to say what my impressions were. I think to, make it more realistic, to give it its impact, because these things really happen.
Yeah.
I do not cite supernatural forces. I don't think these are demons from hell. I mean, I think they have other origins that can be explained, not thoroughly explained. Now, others may disagree with me, and that's fine because we just don't know. I'm just going on my own premises and what I've experienced. My brother, my twin brother, you may want to have him on sometime. In fact, maybe you want to have both of us on.
Have fun.
Yeah. Well, we are very similar in our approaches. My brother is a religious demonologist. I'm a secular demonologist, so we differ there. But our methodologies are much the same. And we look just alike. In fact, I can do a very good Keith impression. I don't think he does. He doesn't sound like me. He can't do me. But I can convince you I'm Keith if you knew him. In fact, one time we had a radio interview, and so no visual. And as we were talking, I said, guess what? We have my brother's here. Keith's here. This is a surprise. Welcome, Keith. So, and they said, Keith, the radio host is saying, we have Keith Johnson too. And I said, yes, it's good to be here. Hello, everybody. I say hello to my beautiful wife, Sandra. Hello, Sandra. How's Keith Jr.? Yes. Well, I'm glad to be here. So Keith, I was saying, this is a surprise. And I even had us debating. I said, no, Keith, you were going to say, yeah, I want to tell my story. Yeah, but Keith, remember, can I say my thing? Okay, Keith, I'm sorry. And I had them convinced. Got a couple of friends with me, like Elise, and they were busting a gut. Because I pulled it off. It really did sound like I never said it was Keith. I let him believe it was. Keith came in the last 15 minutes, I even had to I had me interrupting Keith. But I want to say, can I just say it? Can I say it, please? All right, Keith. I'm sorry. We won't do that on your show because you'll be able to see it. Yes. But if you want to have Keith and me on, sure.
I'd love to have you back and your brother.
Yeah. And we will be making a Panorama Paranormal. We'll be at Ocean State Paracon in Harrisville, Rhode Island, the town of the Conjuring House. That's why it's there, at the grounds of the Assembly Theater. That will be September 13th. No, I'm sorry, September 9th and 10th. We'll be there, and that's a big one coming up. And I'll be at the Warren's Con, Warren's Fantasia, it's called this year, and that one is expected to draw about 7,000 guests, and that will be at Mohegan Sun Casino in Ledyard, Connecticut. So yeah, keep posted. You can access our website. We'll have that posted, our engagements. But I'm really looking forward to Ocean State Paracon, that is managed by Ken DaCosta. And it's always for a charity, different charity every year, but the proceeds do go to charity. I can vouch for that. And we'll have tables, weather permitting, we'll have our tables outside. And that's, well, even if it rains, we'll be outside canopies. And that's just, there are many people I only see once a year. I love to see them. And Ocean State Paracon is one venue that brings people together. So come see Carl and Elise and Keith. And possibly his wife Sandra will be there at Ocean State Paracon. Rhode Island is the Ocean State. Also, Little Rhodey. Oh, next time if you want to hear about my Bigfoot research, I was also a Bigfoot enthusiast, a Bigfoot researcher, I'll say, for 3.5 years, and I actually got close to a creature, very close to a creature, and I call that creature Big Rhodey. I mean, Rhode Island's Little Rhodey, so I figured he's Big Rhodey. For however long this Sasquatch is in Rhode Island, he's Big Rhodey. And Bigfoot Seekers, Finding Bigfoot, did an episode on that, on Big Rhodey. Featured us.
Awesome. I can't wait to have you back now.
Okay. I can't bring Bigfoot. I don't have any samples of them, but I can.
That's all right.
I can tell you my experiences.
We've had a couple of Bigfoot guests. One of them was very well studied, and the other one brought us a bag full of pubic hair. So
we don't know what we're going to get here.
so it's a mixed bag.
Pubic hair, though. That's something. Somebody had meticulously saved that, I'm sure. Yeah. By the way, I am coming to you from the headquarters of Johnston Historical Society, Johnston, Rhode Island. So all these file cabinets, it looks like we've got all our paranormal research here. Actually, there are documents in some of these drawers that go back to the 1750s. Deeds, property titles.
Dang.
This is real stuff because it is a historic society. A lot of valuable documents here. So it looks like this is all my research here. Put it together. Now
we love the stories, Carl. Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure, for our audience, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and check out everything going on with Panorama Paranormal on their website, on their Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere else they've got going. And check out Carl's book, Shadow Realms,
Demonology Handbook. Yeah.
Demonology
Handbook.
Shadow
Realms Demonology Handbook.
Demonology Handbook.
Great show. Hello there.
And until next time.
Somebody's buying it right now. Thank you.
He's buying it right now. It's happening right now. Until next time, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.
It's been my